Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
There's been much demand for an episode of Cut the Clutter on the climate change issue. And the reason I haven't done it as yet, not even after the IPCC report came out yesterday, is because I've been diffident myself. Because these are issues which are very complex, very cluttered, and God knows, I must speak the truth, that even I don't understand them. Or I did not even know the basics unless I figured that the issue is so important that I must get rid of my fear. I must read up and attempt a Cut the Clutter episode, because all of us know that climate change is taking place. All of us know climate change is bad. Unless you're Donald Trump, you will say climate change is bad, and it is happening. We know it's causing extreme weather events. We know it's threatening the monsoons, melting the glaciers. Himalayas are right now endangered. Our oceans are rising. All that we know. But then a few things happen. One is, why this is happening is very complicated, right? But whatever is happening is wrong. So people who need to control it, who need to do something about it, they know better, they'll do something about it. That's one. The second thing is, in any case, what can I do about it? If I switch off the lights before going out, how much is that going to help? So let us see, koi kuch karega, mujhe kuch karne ko nahi hai. Then these reports come out, like this IPCC report. Now, this IPCC is also ultimately a UN organization. Now, the problem with UN organizations and the way they function and their reports is that they are deadly bureaucratic and double deadly boring. And they take their time. Now, IPCC is one of the newer institutions. IPCC stands for Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. 195 governments are involved in it. IPCC was set up by two organizations, that is the World Meteorology Organization and United Nations Environmental Program. So they together set it up, and member states of both organizations, that is WMO, World Met Organization, and UNEP, both joined in, so 195 countries. They pool in their skills, resources, information, etc. to produce these reports. And then you see these reports, they are complicated, they are long, and you say, I know the nut graph. That is a paragraph which gives you the essentials of the story. The nut graph is still that climate change is happening too fast. You have to try and stop it, and it happens because of emissions. But beyond that, what is what? Emissions, greenhouse gases. So what is greenhouse gases? Now, I know that all of you are much smarter than me. So it is possible that a lot of you know the exact definition of greenhouse gas, or why is a greenhouse gas called greenhouse gas. But when I can talk politics, diplomacy, political economy, cricket, hockey, many other things, global diplomacy, strategic issues, because I read about them all the time, and I've lived that as a journalist. But climate change is new even for me, given my vintage. So for me, I even have to figure out what is greenhouse gas. So what is greenhouse gas if, like me, you don't know the meaning? Why is a greenhouse gas called a greenhouse gas? Have you been inside a greenhouse where vegetables are grown? You go inside a greenhouse, usually you would find that the greenhouse inside is warmer than what it is outside. That's why in a greenhouse, you might be able to grow bhindi in winter, or maybe lauki in winter. These are summer vegetables, because in a greenhouse, you can regulate the temperature. Usually a greenhouse is warmer. So greenhouse gases are those that make the earth warmer. And because they make the earth warmer, they cause a greenhouse effect on the earth. So they are called greenhouse gases. As simple as that. Truth to tell, I have discovered it because I had to read up for this episode of Cut the Clutter. And that's one of the reasons I love my job so much, because I learn, it forces me to learn something new all the time. Now, what is IPCC? I will read out the recommendations and the warnings as we go ahead. Chances are some of you have read those, but let's first understand some basics. I told you what is IPCC, how IPCC came in. It's a bit like bit, not exactly, bit like the WHO of environmental issues, WHO of climate change. So it doesn't do any research of its own. It commissions a lot of research. It also aggregates a lot of research that comes in. It has experts from many countries. It assesses that research and then it arrives at its reports. So in fact, I'm sharing with you a screenshot of the IPCC website. Check out the website. Please see that. And if you are interested in environmental research, you might also notice that IPCC also offers quite a few scholarships for PhD research in climate change. So it is a UN institution that produces these reports. It has 3 working groups. What do these do? Working group 1 researches or aggregates the research or studies the research. It doesn't research itself. It studies, commissions the research on physical science basis of climate change. Physical science basis is what are greenhouse gases, how are they produced, etc., etc. And how do they bring about climate change. Climate change today essentially is increasing temperatures because of increase in greenhouse gases. As we told you, greenhouse gases increase temperature. And I'll explain to you why and how as simply as I probably can, or maybe as my chemistry or physics teacher might have done in my class 7 or 8 or 9. Then it got a bit complicated. Now, then working group 2. Working group 2 look at climate change impacts. Working group 1 is telling you the physical reasons or scientific reasons for climate change. Working group 2 looks at climate change impact, also adaptations and vulnerability. For example, working 2 will tell you that Maldives, look at Malé, if global temperatures go up by this much, Malé would disappear, or this part of Bangladesh will disappear. These are low-lying places, or these Pacific islands will disappear. Those low-lying places are the most threatened as climate change takes place, as temperatures go up, which means glaciers melt, Greenland ice cap melts, and also a lot of the polar areas melt, and all that melted ice comes into the waters and global sea levels go up, and also with temperature, oceans also expand and rise. So this one calculates the impact, the second group. Working group 3 is mitigation of climate change. That is, now that we know what causes climate change, group 1, now we know what are the impacts of that climate change. Third group will tell you how to counter it. So that is how these 3 groups work. And then there are task forces. For example, there is a task force especially on greenhouse inventories, which means greenhouses which are already being produced everywhere and what can be done about that. Now, what is a greenhouse gas? A greenhouse gas, the literal translation is a gas that absorbs or emits radiant energy within the thermal infrared spectrum, which for extreme simplicity means really the heat that matters to us. Now, are greenhouse gases all bad? There's a surprise. We cannot survive without greenhouse gases. We are able to live, life is able to survive on the earth because we have greenhouse gases. Why? Because greenhouse gases emit radiation, and they absorb radiation and they also emit it. Net, they emit more, so they make the earth warmer. If greenhouse gases were not there, fantastic, right? You would say, oh, greenhouse gases are the problem. I found this magical solution, some from Aladdin's lamp. The genie has come down and said, Master, what do you want? I'll say, I want you to banish greenhouse gases. Done. We'll all die. We'll all cease to exist. All kinds of life on the earth will cease to exist. Why? Because without greenhouse gases, the earth's average temperature will be minus 18 degrees Celsius, minus 18 degrees. Life will not survive then. Today, generally the average is kept, say, around 15 degrees or a little bit more, because there are hot areas, cold areas, there are winters and summers. That is the temperature at which life thrives. When it goes up, as it's going up now, then changes begin to happen. And again, greenhouse gases, you might think that all of these are very unfamiliar, mystical, mysterious gases. But scientists among you might think that I'm telling you stuff that everybody knows, but everybody doesn't know, because everybody doesn't know science. I don't know everything. I have to read up. So even water vapor is a greenhouse gas. Without water vapor, can we live? It's a greenhouse gas. Can you reduce it? That's a complicated question, because water vapor actually moderates the temperatures. Carbon dioxide, methane, and chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, and we'll talk about that in a bit. These are the more offensive greenhouse gases, because they are the ones which are being produced because of human activity, industrial activity, things that we human beings do for comfort, for transportation, for producing energy, for our energy use, and that produces carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, that is N2O, and also ozone is produced. And ozone is also threatened then again because of chlorofluorocarbons. I will talk about chlorofluorocarbons. So as human beings, quality of life has improved over the centuries, particularly since the Industrial Revolution in 1750 or thereabouts. If you look at the period of Industrial Revolution in 1750, when Industrial Revolution began, from there until now, our emissions, our carbon dioxide emissions have gone up 50% in the world. 50%, that's a lot. And that is causing now this big change. Until 1750, when there wasn't that much industrial activity, climate change wasn't taking place. But 1750 onwards, as the engines came in, as the use of fuel came in, internal combustion, external combustion, most of us have read that in our early school. When all that came in and humankind learned to use energy for its comfort, safety, long life, for watching TV, for being able to record this interview on camera, that use of energy that came as a result of industrialization changed things. So for clarity, if we need to understand, in 1750, the total carbon dioxide available in our environment or in our atmosphere was 228 parts per million. Today, it has gone to 419 parts per million. And this carbon dioxide is not needed like water vapor to moderate our temperature. This is now adding to climate change or adding to increasing temperatures. The last time we had temperatures of the kind that this carbon dioxide is now producing for us was 3 million years ago. That was in the Pliocene period. That's what the IPCC report also says. 3 million years ago, when the first human beings had just evolved. And then we know that Earth became cooler because of various other factors that we can't go into right now, and it became more livable. As it became more livable, life thrived. Then, as we know, by 1750, we had the Industrial Revolution, and then we start going to the other extreme. So these changes that took place 1750 onwards are called anthropogenic changes, changes that we human beings caused. Because we also learned to use fossil fuels. Earlier, you might burn some wood here and there, but now we burned coal, we burned oil, gas, etc. And we were using energy for a lot of things, not just for cooking our food or maybe using it in extreme winter. Now energy became a part of our lives, everything, and automobiles came in, and fast mode of transport, airplanes came in, and deforestation also took place because global populations increased. That is why we say that these are anthropogenic changes. So we human beings have changed our climate out of our own need for comfort. Now the other thing that came up, I told you, I'll tell you about this in a minute, is CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons. Now what are chlorofluorocarbons? If you see the definition, that is partly halogenated paraffin hydrocarbon that contain only carbon, hydrogen, chlorine, fluorine, and these are produced as a volatile derivative of methane, ethane, propane, etc. That means When you burn those gases, then you get this a kind of byproduct. This is also known by the DuPont company's old brand name, that is Freon. Freon gas was used in our refrigerators, our air conditioners. What Freon gas does is, it's wonderful to have it have it run refrigerators and air conditioners and many other things. It's very useful for us, but it's also a propellant. For example, when you spray those deodorants, right? Those need a propellant. When you spray a mosquito repellent, that needs a propellant. How does it come out of that spray? So this also works as a propellant. But since we started using a lot of this, again for our comfort, we discovered in the course of time that this was punching a hole in our ozone layer. And once our ozone layer has a hole or becomes thinner, then a lot more ultraviolet radiation starts coming down, because that ozone layer actually blocks. It's a kind of UV block. You put that sun cream to protect yourself from UV. That ozone layer works a little bit like that. As that thins, you will also find that a lot of UV allergies and UV eruptions have gone up with people. So when that happened, again, there was a response to that, and chlorofluorocarbons are being replaced globally, including in India, by hydrochlorofluorocarbons. Those are not environmentally destructive, but that has a cost. And then the question also always comes up that, look, you want me to change this because you've been using it everywhere. I've only started using it now. If you ask me, I for the first time used a fridge in my home only after I had got married, and I borrowed money from a bank and bought a little Godrej fridge, right? Because a lot of the Indians, very few Indians until the mid 70s, late 70s, mid 80s had refrigerators in their homes, but every American did, every European did. So then now the same countries come and tell you, boss, don't use the CFCs because this is punching a hole in ozone. So you say, okay, but what about you? Why are you stopping me? You stop it. So then a deal was made whereby developed countries helped developing countries to shift to environmentally friendly coolants and propellants, etc., etc. So that is what the CFC question is about. The same debate is right now going on carbon dioxide. That, look, you have so much energy, you use so much energy. You are telling me not to increase my energy consumption. Because you consume so much energy, you live much better lives. You are a developed country. Because I use too little energy, I am a third world country. So you are now telling me that I should remain a third world country forever, because if I try and become like you, then glaciers will melt. But glaciers are melting because you use too much energy. So either you cut down your own use of energy, or if you want me to switch to other things, say move away from coal and things like that, to consume less energy, it costs money. So you pay me the money to shift that. So Paris Climate Accord said that $100 billion per year the developed world will give to developing world. But if you see this, to switch to more environment friendly sources of energy, etc. But if you look at this report, IPCC report, this would actually suggest that developed countries need to spend a lot more, and whatever was happening earlier with the Paris deal, that is something that Donald Trump walked out of. So Paris then was dead in the water. Biden has now revived it, and that's why it's good that this report has come out now. So I will just give you an idea of the politics of this. Every time you find that developed countries say, oh, cut down emissions, right? 100 trees or 200 trees, say in RA forest. The fact is that look at Brazil. Brazil is now cutting millions of hectares of forests to grow cash crops. You see other countries, you see what China has done in the past, you see what Europe's done in the past, you see America, Canada, and you see the lifestyles they are living. But they are telling the rest of the world now, देखो भाई हमसे तो गलती हो गई, अब आप नहीं करो. But the fact is, you are living so well. Why should people of India, Pakistan, etc., etc., not also live so well? So you cut down your emissions, And don't tell me that, oh, India is now the third largest emitter or fourth largest emitter, because then you don't take into account my population. If you look at the total emissions, for example, India is still a half of America's total emissions. And America is 1/4 of India's population. So you can see the difference between per capita emissions or per capita energy consumption by an average Indian and by an average American. So I will give you some figures on some countries which are more striking, just to give you an idea of what's going on. If you look at America, America's per capita emission, that is in terms of emissions per ton per person, is 15.52. Global average is 4.79. So America is nearly 4 times the global average already, right? See Russia, 11.44. That is 2.5 times the global average. Then you look at real champions, the country that lectures the whole world on political correctness and liberalism and environment friendliness, blah, blah, blah. The most hypocritical country of all, Canada. Right? They sermonize everybody. We are the most perfect country in the world. Canada's energy consumption, the greenhouse emissions per person in terms of tons is 18.58. That is a lot more than 4.79, which is the global average. And then you come to some others, and then you will see some trends. Look at these Arab oil-rich countries, because oil-rich means energy comes for free. You then consume it for free. You have big cars, big SUVs. You air condition everything to 18 degrees, 24/7. You build these big malls. You keep your lights on, etc., etc. For a very small population. Now, I will tell you about some oil-bearing Arab countries. UAE, 23.37. That is 1.5 times America. Kuwait, 25.65. That is 1.5 times Canada. Qatar, which again sends you all messages of liberalism and political correctness by funding Al Jazeera and running Al Jazeera there. It is the champion of the world on the wrong side. Its emission is the highest per capita in the world, 37.29 tons per person. Incredible. That is more than twice as much as America, more than twice as much even as Canada. And then you get lectured to. So the idea is, okay, you don't like global warming, then don't tell India, Pakistan, etc., to consume less, because to consume less but yet to have the same quality of life, we have to invest in other sources of energy. That costs money. You say stop coal, but you will also make so much profit on oil and gas, which is less damaging than coal, but still damaging. But if I have to switch to alternates or renewables, it costs a lot more money. So you pay for it, or you cut down your own consumption, and that doesn't work. So look at the other extreme. Look at India, for example. Even China. China is 7.38. That's about a half of America, right? 7.38, but India is only 1.91. That is the reason, while America is 4 times, at least 4 times, a little over 4 times India's population, America's total emission is more than twice as much as India's, because per capita basis, we Indians are consuming too little energy, and that's why we are leading very poor quality lives compared to the Western world. And that's why for them to lecture us, and for many of us to buy into that lecture, sir, Baba, हम अपना सब कुछ बंद कर देते हैं अभी यहाँ पे इंडिया में. हमारा सब कुछ बंद करने से कुछ होगा भी नहीं. Even if we shut down everything, nothing will happen unless the richer countries change. China is about 4 times of India's, and China's total emissions are also about 4 times of India's, because our populations are about the same. And if India is 1.91, see where Pakistan is. Pakistan is at 0.87, which tells you that they have a long way to go. So countries like India, Pakistan, a lot of Africa, Bangladesh, countries with large populations, they have no choice. They will go up the emission scale. They will go up the energy usage scale. Now, does rise in emission scale have to keep pace with the rise in energy scale? No. What is the solution? Solution is moving to renewables, more electric cars, etc., etc. How do we do it? It's all very expensive. Do we have to spend all the money? Then we'll not do it. But if the developed world will not cut down their own consumption and wants you to do it, then they will have to pay the bill for you to move to renewables, electric cars, etc., etc. That's what climate change negotiations are all about right now.